Yeah, thanks, Casey. As you heard Casey just say, Texas Governor Greg Abbott not waiting for the administration to fix this mess. He's deploying 10,000 state troopers and National Guard members to as another caravan heads to the U.S. So Lieutenant Chris Olivarez with the Texas Department of Public Safety is now joining us. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work down there, first of all. Second of all, will this be enough?
Hey, Lawrence, good morning. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So, well, I can tell you right now, the thousands that we've already deployed as far as National Guardsmen and state troopers to the southern border has been effective. It's been an effective strategy to what we're doing to try to secure the border. We've made thousands of arrests. We've seized thousands of drugs. And as far as currency, just within the past 3 weeks, we've seized over $1.6 million of currency that was making its way south into Mexico to supply the cartels. But when we talk about mass migration, as far as the reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico policy, that still remains to be seen. We're 10 months into this crisis, and I can tell you right now, the criminal organizations, smuggling organizations are profiting off this crisis. And I can tell you it's going to be very difficult for them just to sit back and close up shop. That's not going to happen. They're making millions and millions of dollars a week off of this crisis, just off of human smuggling. So again, that remains to be seen how effective the Remain in Mexico policy is going to take place as far as this current crisis goes.
So, Lieutenant, you're saying that was 1.6 million of the illegal proceeds that they were trying to bring back to the cartels? Wow, that is a lot of money. How upsetting is this? The fact that the federal government has largely ignored the situation on the southern border, and it's falling onto your shoulders.
Well, I can tell you right now that at least as far as the state agency goes, as far as Texas DPS, the morale for our state troopers is at an all-time high. I mean, we have great support, tremendous support from Governor Greg Abbott, from our Texas legislatures, from our state leadership, because we have the resources to take care of this problem. But the issue is that the federal government is stepping in and they're not allowing us to do our jobs because there's certain areas, especially on federal property, that we cannot take enforcement action because the federal government does not want us to take enforcement action. So that's one thing that the American people need to understand is that we're more than ready. We have the resources. We have the assets to step in and secure the border. But again, the question needs to be asked of the federal government as to why you're not allowing Texas to step in and take care of this crisis if you're not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So, in October of 2021, I know you're well aware, but there were 164,303 encounters at the southern border, according to CBP. And that's more than double from October of 2020. So numbers like these, it is playing into the president's approval rating. The latest Fox News poll shows 59% of registered voters disapprove of how the president is handling the border. That's 59%. So it's been a major failure of the federal government. How do you, in your opinion, quickly stop these caravans from coming?
Well, it's the messaging. I can tell you that right now, Lawrence. It's the messaging. The messaging from day one from the federal government has been, come to the border because you will be released into the country. And that's why we're seeing this mass migration taking place. The numbers have not decreased. The data shows that. So as long as the messaging is still out there, and also the criminal organizations use that messaging to their advantage because they want to profit off of this crisis. So they're going to continue telling these illegal immigrants to make it to the border, to make it to the U.S. because you will be released into the country. And when they see that, when friends and families have made that journey and they're released into the country, they know that's going to take place. And now, not only that, but with the messaging as far as incentivizing those that they claim were separated from the previous years, incentivizing them with $450,000 a head, that's not going to resolve the current crisis right now. It's just going to make it worse, and it's going to continue to escalate. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, I want to ask you, too, about this. We're dealing with a new variant now of COVID. We're on pace for more than 1 million people to cross the border illegally, and that's more than the population of some states. How many crossings do you believe has COVID? Do we know? And it's a health risk, too, isn't it?
It is a health risk, and that's one thing that we don't know. And that's a scary part of it right there, Lawrence, is that we don't know how many of these illegal immigrants were released into the country that weren't tested for COVID. We know the vast majority weren't, especially in Del Rio when we had the situation back in September with the Haitians. Over 12,000 that were released into the country. Again, we don't know how many or if any of all were tested for COVID. So that is a national health issue, not only for the state of Texas, but for the entire country. So that's one thing that we need to be very concerned about as this crisis continues to continue to happen.
Sure. In the last 30 seconds, Lieutenant, what about offering them vaccinations? We're hearing that the Biden administration will, allow them to have a shot before they go back for the Remain in Mexico policy. Will that just bring more people to the border who want to get that shot?
That's what we foreseen. I think that's what I believe is going to happen. I think that should have been taking place on day one when you're releasing thousands and thousands of illegal immigrants into the country and you're not vaccinating them, you're not testing them for COVID. and we're still at the height of this pandemic right now, where we're still seeing COVID spreading throughout the entire country. But again, that should have been taking place from day one. I think it's only going to continue to motivate these illegal immigrants to make that journey because now they're going to be COVID tested. And as long as this crisis is taking place, I can tell you right now, Lawrence, the smuggling organizations are going to continue to profit off it. They're going to find ways to smuggle illegal immigrants into the country.
Right. Thank you, Lieutenant Olivarez. Keep up the good work down there. Appreciate it. Thank you.